Okay, what we're going to do is use Photoshop to create this package design. Some of you are going to be creating a box. I saw some like gum packages and maybe something that's going to be like for a bar of soap or whatever, okay? And some of you are going to be creating a label. So what you need to do is you need to create an outline, a template of your label or box on Photoshop, and then start putting all the design elements on there. So the first thing you have to do is get the size, the specification. You need to say this is going to be a label and it's going to be 3 inches wide by 8 inches long. Okay? So decide that before you do anything in Photoshop. If it's a box, you need to ideally have a box there, that you can take apart and use. If it's a package for gum or what have you, and you're going to be using that as your first layer of reference image to work from. Okay. So once you have those items, you're going to go into Photoshop and you're going to create a new document, and the new document is going to be 8.5 by 11, and it's going to be a resolution of 300. Okay, so you can hit letter there and just go ahead and go. Or if you think you want the orientation to be different, it's always by default portrait, but it might work better to be landscape for most of these. So then we're going to click on create. Okay, so the first thing is, let's say it's a label. It's going to go around a jar or a can, okay? So that's going to be the easy, okay? But I know for some of you, you want a little bit more of a challenge, and I think creating the box might be something that some of you want to take on that challenge, all right? But first, let's do the label. So to create a label of a certain size, you can use the guides in Photoshop. So up at the top and on the left, there are rulers. Now, if you don't see your rulers, you want to hit View, and you want to come down to Rulers. And if it's not checked, you want to check it, okay? And the rulers show up. So what this will do, it'll allow you to put a guideline. It's not going to print or anything, but it's going to put a guide on your paper. So I'm going to go up to the top ruler. I'm going to hover right in there. I'm going to hold down that mouse pad, that trackpad or whatever it is, and I'm going to pull this guide to 1 right there. So whatever the width is of your label, you want to pull down another guide to say, let's say it's going to be 4 inches. So I'm going to put it right at 4. And then if it's 8 inches long, then I can come over to the left-hand guide, and I'm going to put a guide at 1, and then 1 at 8. Okay. So that's where I'm going to make my label. We're making this exactly the size that it will be when printed out. It would wrap around whatever it is you're making this for, okay? So now that I have that, I have just a background with some guides. I'd like you to create a layer, okay? So layer 1, let's say outline. Okay, so we have the outline layer, and we have the guideline, so we're defining our shape. And by the way, I set this to 8 here. If I wanted it 8 inches and I'm starting at 1, I should have put this guideline over to 9. Okay, so just keep that in mind, the little mistake I made there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline this, and I'm going to go to the shape tool. So your shape tool might say rectangle. It looks like that, where the little arrow is pointing. So you go to the little tab that is on the right hand bottom corner, and you go to line tool, and you are going to see that all of these choices come up here in a contextual menu. So what I want you to look at, I want you to look at over here where it says weight 12 pixels. If this is like 1 pixel, it's going to be hard to see. So I'm making it 12 so I can see it. And it's going to really snap to those guides. All right, so there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. Okay, so I'm going to go up to this move tool right here so I can just turn off that selection. So now I have my area defined. So this is what you're going to be designing on. So I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this text, okay? If that's what I'm going to work with first, all right? So this is where you can start to experiment. That was a mistake. Start to experiment with the typefaces that you want to use, okay? So you could just begin to type out something, type out the name of your product. That was in white, so I'm going to change it up here to, right now, I might be considering something in the lavender, so I'll say that, okay? So I can play around with this and say that is definitely not what I want. You can pull down all of the typefaces that you have available, and you can look here for something that looks like it might go with your design. Okay, so let's just say this one right here. It's called Lamar Pen. I like, and I'm going to look at that, and okay, maybe that's cool. Maybe I want it to be smaller, and maybe I need it to be running straight up and down. So when I click on this instance of text here, I can see that layer is selected, and I also see the different things I can do to it up here. All right, I can change the color, I can change the size, I can make it do some fancy things in the way of moving around. Like, let's say, I'm going to warp it somehow. Maybe I want it to be like a flag shape. All right, I click OK to that. Thank you. And I'm going to click that move tool again just to get out of it. And I can move this around. If I want to make it go in a different direction, I can do Command T, and that's going to put the selection around it. When I move off to the side, notice how it has that curved arrow, and that's going to allow me to turn it. Okay? Notice it's turning on this angle of this circle that's in the middle. All right. And then I can simply resize it this way at this point. Okay? So at this point, it's just like experimentation. I might get rid of that and say I don't like it at all. I don't like the color. So if I want to change the color, I can come up here. I can choose from the color picker. I can also go to color libraries. Okay? I can go to different books of color. So this is your experimental phase, okay? Because when we have a live class, I want to, make sure everybody has, Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, I'm going to have to give you something else. You have to find some alternate way of completing this. But for today, this is for experimenting. All right. So, let's say I choose these colors. Ooh, I like that. So I'll get rid of that right there. And I'm just going to leave that there. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't. Okay? The one thing on this rectangle is I should know, am I going to have something that's going to be on the back of the label, over here and over here, and then this is going to be my main area. Okay, so for right now, I got that instance of text on there. I'm going to play around with some of the shapes that I'm thinking of putting on this label. So I'm going to make another layer, and I'm going to call it shapes. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to the shape tool, and I'm going to see what that has to offer. I by no means am committed to anything right now. This is a rectangle tool. So if I wanted to make an area here, let's say I want to have the back with some information on it. I want to make a solid rectangle of color there. So I'm going to fill that in with some color. I'm not sure what. But right now, notice how it's an outline. I don't want that. So I'm going to come up here to stroke. I'm going to turn off stroke, and I'm going to turn on the fill right there. And I can choose a color in here. I can also go down to here and do the same thing I did for the text. You know, whatever I want. Maybe I want that. All right. All right, so let's just take a look. So we got this shape on here. What else can I do to this shape? Well, I could change the size right here if I wanted to in properties, or let's say I wanted to make this transparent. I could come over here to the layers panel, and I could go to opacity. I could turn down the opacity of it, make it more transparent if I wanted to. That's just, some of the things that you can do. If I want to change the look of the color, I can do that as well in here. So, I'm pointing out some of the things that you might want to think about as you're working through this. All right. So I'm on the shape layer. So maybe I put a shape, as I say, for the back of the label. Maybe I just want to experiment with some patterns, some designs. Maybe I want to draw some flowers or something. Maybe I want to just look here and what else does the shape tool have to offer. So I'm going to come down here to where it says custom shape tool. Custom shape tool. Yeah, that's one. It looks like a blob. And notice up here in that contextual tab again, now it is everything that has to do with shape. This is the color of your shape. The stroke is off, and I'm going to come over here and see all the different shapes that are available. If you don't see all of these different shapes, if you click this little gear here and you come down to, actually it's not the gear, you have to touch on that little tiny part there and say all. Oops, that was animals. And if I say replace current shapes with the shapes from all, okay. So now at this point, I have every shape that is available. So you might look through here, you might find something that is going to be appropriate for your design. I don't know, you can move these around with Command T. If I need to change it in its direction, I can Command T on it, and I can change its direction. I can make it a little smaller, a little fatter. I'm not saying you have to use these, but I'm just putting it out there for you. Okay. So we have shape 4. Okay, and we have shape 3 there, and you could name them, big leaf, little leaf, whatever you wanted to. Okay. So we have some color, we have some shapes on here. If I wanted to have an entire colored background, something that is going to give me a base color to work with, I can go back to the shape tool, I could do the rectangle tool, and I could just make this whole thing a solid color. If you want to do that to begin with and not draw those lines, that's fine as well. Okay? So I'm going to move that below everything. All right? Because we don't want that to be like that. I got all those shapes that are my lines. Go down here. All right. So I can't see those leaves because they are the exact same color as this right now. So if I double click on it, I could change the color of those. Okay. And I'm going to come up here and see what happens if I do that. All right. Well, that's not behaving right now. But anyway, that's what I want you to do. If you're doing this label, these are the things I want you to experiment with. Please spend some time doing this. On Tuesday, we're going to have a class where I will be on there with you so we can talk about all the issues and questions that you have. All right. So same thing is going to happen if you're doing a box. You want to have like that flattened box that you eventually put together. Same kind of experimentation is going on, same kind of placement of things. But what I'm going to do is just kind of give you an idea of how that will happen. So if you are just doing a label, you can tune out right now. And if you want to do the box, please hang in there and let me show you what we're going to do. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place an image that I found online of a box, okay? And that is something you can do. Or if you have a box that you want to use, take it apart, lay it out real flat. You might have to flatten it out. You can take a photograph of it and you can use that. All right, so I'm going to go to place embedded and I'm going to see if I can remember where this is. Okay, there it is, box design. And I'm going to place this in here. Okay. So this now becomes my reference image. I might want to make it bigger because it's going to be a pretty tiny box if this was an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So I'm going to Command T and select it, and I'm going to make this larger. Actually, I'm going to turn it around because I can make it even larger. All right. Okay. Double click on it. Okay. So this becomes, put this up at the top here, this is going to become my template. This will make a box that looks like, I don't know, a box for like candy cigarettes or something like that, okay? But you could use it for a lot of different things. So now that this is the template, what we should do is get rid of these guidelines. You won't need them. You can trace around these lines. So here we have this template placed here. So what you can simply do, if you have a photograph and maybe there's nothing on there, if it's the back of it, then you can just begin designing. If it's just a white image, you can design right on top of that. But make sure you have created a new layer so that you're not doing things right on top of the template. So I have a new layer here. But before I work with that layer, I'm going to go back down to the box design layer. And I want to get rid of all of these words and any imagery on here. I just want to have a blank. All right. So I do, want to keep these little dotted lines because that's where I'm going to fold it. So they're going to end up being my fold lines. So I'll keep them in there. But I'm going to delete everything else by erasing it. So I'm going to go over to the eraser tool and I'm going to make it fairly large. This is a smart object, so I'm just going to rasterize it. And then I'm going to get rid of the stuff that's on there right now. Okay, so I'm erasing everything. I'm just going to go ahead and erase this. And that is going to get rid of those guidelines, but I'm just going to have to deal with that. All right, so I'm going to choose a different kind of brush. so that I can erase a little bit more accurately. So that's something you're just going to have to figure out. And I have lost it. Okay, so all right, so I'm not doing the best job of this right now. Gonna have to find an eraser. Let me see if I can get something that's an eraser. Okay, so I don't know why I'm having an issue with that right now. I'm just gonna make it smaller for right now. If I had time to stop, but I don't want to bore you all to death, you're probably all falling asleep anyway. So I'm just going to keep it like this, but you can find a more appropriate eraser. So I'm going to get rid of everything but those guidelines, and I haven't done the best job of that. As I say, you want the guidelines there so when you fold it later, when this is finished, you know where to fold it. If you feel like that's not something important to you, just go ahead and erase all of the guidelines. That's fine. But what I'm trying to do right now is get rid of anything that was part of the original design. So now what I have is a clean slate, okay? So I can design my box on here and do the same thing I did with the label. You know, start thinking about the color, start thinking about the typographic design. How is it going to be laid out on here? So this is experiment day. This isn't necessarily has to be, this is not the final day, all right? So, you know, if I write, you know, whatever the name is, and I start looking at my typeface choices here and making some decisions, that is all you need to do for today. Whatever you get done, I want you to save it to the Dropbox. That's going to be called draft of package design, okay? And you may want to use the brush tool if you feel like you want to. Actually, I need a new layer, and this could be like, I could call this brushwork or whatever it is. Okay. I could experiment with my designs on here. Okay. So I know this has been very long to listen to, and I apologize for that. There's really no other way I can think about doing this. But hopefully you get the idea. Please contact me if you don't know what I'm talking about. If you're like, I just didn't understand it at all, and I will definitely walk you through it. Email me, and then we can think about the way, you know, if we want to just jump on to a quick, you know, meeting so we can see each other, I can see what you're doing, you know, let's do that. So, you know, good luck with it. Let me know of your questions.